let's look at Three Easy Pieces by John Cage. These are arrangements I made in 2013, 14-ish, published in 2017. These were done in 1933 when Cage was a very young man. This is actually before he studied with Schoenberg, I think, right about that time. And they're very different from his later music. The thing I find very interesting is he's already kind of adjusting with phrase lengths, with time, and with forms. So let's look at the first movement, which is called Round. And it starts with just a plain melody that I put on the third string, and I will play it and I'll show you how I differentiate between leaps and step movement. So when it's G, A, B, C, D, that's steps. When there's a leap, anything bigger than a second, I put it a third and second string. Now I put that on the third, second, and you can see I'm doing. So I like that ringing over each other just a little bit. And a little vibrato. Piano can't do that, so I think we should take advantage of that. A little glissando, but that's me. Because you could also do it all in the first position. They'll both work. And now in my right hand, I use rest stroke mainly. Unless I want the notes to ring, I'll switch to free stroke. But that's the type of melody you could really get away with because it's moving kind of slow. And you could do one finger. It's a wonderful exercise if you don't know how to finger something. What I like to make my students do is play it all with your I finger. Play it all with your M, A. Use your pinky. And then go in and be like, well, what if I did it I-A? I-A, 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 I-A. Weird crossing, but not a bad crossing. Now, depending on your guitar, I think the hardest note to play is open E string. You can't do anything. It's bright. It's just, you can't do anything. Your left hand, and Giuliani talked about this, your left hand really controls the quality of the sound. So if you have a nice kind of pad on your fingertip, not exactly perpendicular, but use the pad. It's okay. You'll be very secure. You can actually get a nice warm sound. When you're on the pad, it's kind of almost plasticky, and you're using a very small area to play a note, which small area on a small area, your string, makes you're going to miss it on occasion. The most secure way of playing is really use those pads and don't feel bad. But it all depends on context. With all rules, it all depends on context. So I'm playing a single line melody, no harmony. So it's very, it's the, we want to use the pad, you get a nice warm sound, and we're not going to miss the string because that's very important. We don't want to miss notes. But secondly, those notes have to be beautiful or else they might as well be missed. So after that first phrase, which is the end of measure 6, that melody comes in now in the bass line, and I use my thumb. And that is all thumb because I want the sounds to be different. I don't want to do it I-M or I-A. They sound too similar. And so all of a sudden we have harmony and we have the contrapuntal work that makes a round. Now I do this bar 7 beat 2. That's a reach, and I do it 1 bar chord to 3 because I want my pinky on the next chord, C and G. Another way to finger that, open B, and then slide back down. They're both an option. I like that warm tone, and so it repeats. Maybe finger it 2 different ways. Ooh, I know it gets a little scary, but you can do it, and which is really, it adds to the fun. Just forgot it. Now, one part of that is I want the voices to be very different. So I would, if I have melody on the first string, playing a second string open, which is that B, they're kind of close to each other. That third string, when we finger a note, it tends to have a little darker tone to it. And so now I can actually, everything is on that third string. Fourth string. And I do use some open strings in there, especially when, because that would be hard. That's just too hard. So I use an open E on measure 9. Bar chord on the G sharp, and then I'm D on the third string, open B, and then my G sharp is right here. And then I stay in 4th, 5th position. Again, G sharp. Open D. And that nice little slide to back to our A minor. To start. Now we get into that third phrase, which is the pickup to measure 13. Reaches, and I'll explain. What happens here, so you can see on the piano part, at measure 13, the third line, the round, the voice changes. So Cage doesn't follow the rules exactly. That's what this little dotted line means in the piano part, is that the 2 voices, they flip. And so that is really hard to notate on a single staff on the guitar. So maybe once at some point I'll figure out how exactly we should have done that. They're both in treble clef. So unlike piano grand staff, this C, which is in the right hand, is actually below the pitch of A that's in the left hand. And so on the guitar score, I had to flip that because it doesn't make sense. We don't have left hand, right hand. So the A, we actually always notate the higher pitch above the lower pitch. When I first transcribed it, I was like, what happened here? And then I remembered both parts are in treble clef. Okay, so what I do is I still like that third, when I have the major third or minor thirds in this, I put them on 2 strings. And then, oh look, just like the phrase above, now we just have D in the bass, slide. You don't have to hear it. That's a guide finger. So I have my pinky, and I like to do that a lot when I have melodies on treble strings, is I will change a fingering so I can kind of swing throughout the guitar, because it makes it just easier, and it also makes a sense of legato, that you're connected, because the guitar is never fully legato. We don't have bows. And so we can't make a sound connect fully. There's always a moment of stop. So to get that as clean as possible. And on 13, the last beat, so I have an E minor chord, E and G. When I play the F, I do a partial bar right there, and then I'm ready for the G sharp on the next downbeat. So I prepare my first finger, E, G natural, F natural, G sharp, D. Very efficient movement. And this is the type of thing as an exercise where I would basically put a microscope on it. And I would be, okay, first position's a pain in the butt to play. Little tangent. Leo Brouwer, I had a wonderful master class with him when I was a student in Domaine Forget in Canada, long time ago. And he talked about what little kids in Cuba, they didn't have small guitars like we have now. And so what they would do is they'd stick a capo at like the 9th fret, and you'd be a little kid and you'd play like this. And as you grew, you moved the capo back. So the fear of playing up high doesn't exist. If you look at the playing of René Izquierdo, I mean, it is just legendary how secure he is. And I assume that was kind of how he played. I never actually asked him that question. I should. But I think that's very interesting. And Tárrega has a technique where he would tell you to hold a chord, let's say diminished chord, or 7th chord, excuse me, and play it all the way down, relaxing, no squeakage. That's my rule. And you get a shape. And your frets are closer together, and it's a little easier right here. If you think like, oh, this is first position, that's not comfortable to hold your hand up there in this position for extended periods of time. Yet, that's where we tell people to practice. Like, hey, play first position for the first couple of years of your life. That's the worst. Like F chord and triplets. That's when everyone gives up on guitar or music. But on guitar, the F chord, bar chord, horrible. Put a capo on it, no one complains about bar chords. So what I would do with this is I would sit there and go, okay, let's vamp that up the guitar. Maybe you go up to the 6th or 7th fret and come back down. Now, the most important thing about that is not actually hitting the notes. It's being able to relax in between each one. You play, let go. Relax. That, I just had a conversation with a student about this today. Learning to breathe in between every chord. Not in between, like during every chord. Our hands get tired, especially bar chords. So learning how to go through, squeeze, let go, squeeze, let go. It's like a circuit and more like a strobe light because you're going to be squeezing and playing. Squeeze, let go, squeeze, let go. That's how we play. If you've ever played tennis, we don't squeeze the racket 100% the whole time. No, we actually learn to time it to squeeze right about impact. And then we relax. We don't lose the racket, but there's a moment where it's boom. Same with baseball bats. Anytime we squeeze, we don't just hold it because then we're stuck. We do not want muscles cramping. If we've played Villalobos, Etude 1 is a great example. We have this, and it's supposed to repeat, and you have people die. Well, you practice letting go and moving down. And if that's the etude and that's your practice for the day and you can learn that, you'll be on your way to mastery. Because no one wants to watch someone play who's dying. We don't want to watch people stress. We want to see people who make things look easy. And that takes a lot of practice to learn how not to play with tension. It's not the least amount of tension possible because that's different for each person. But without tension, you learn to squeeze and you let go. There's always going to be some, but we want to minimize it. So back to Cage. right here. So when I play beat 1, I have an E in the bass, but I let go of it a little early. It's okay. We have another string resonating. That's my low E. So when I play the E, I still have an E ringing. So I have a little, it's kind of as close to a pedal as I can get. So I like moving my finger, preparing it. Now, here, Cage writes 2 G sharps. This is measure 14, 15, 16. Which is kind of cool. That's what a piano can do. But the guitar has multiple G sharps. So it's a little stretchy, but pinky. So I do G sharp, let go, E. And then I can actually make it much more exciting for show the 2 voices. And I do 3-1 on F, A, G sharp, so I just slide back. And because I have on measure 17, beat 3 is an F natural and a D. I don't want to do. That makes it sound like the melody is F, D, E. No, I want F, D, E. I want the 2 voices being very clear. Now, this is your choice. You could sit there and say, I don't do stretches like that. Well, it's an opportunity to start, and you practice, holding your finger, getting your wrist out there. Because your tips, there are no muscles in the tips, in the fingers. Muscles are here and here. But the tendons and ligaments can get stronger. And so learning how to do movements with each finger, you can do a walking exercise. This is a wonderful way to teach your hand how to move because we don't play just in a square. The frets are an illusion. Many people will play parallel to the frets. No, it's like measures. They denote one thing, but they should not closet us. And so there are times you're going to do stuff like this. You might even reach over, even in barrios. Barrios is this. Tárrega is this. He had a magical pinky. I mean, unbelievable. Barrios is much easier. It's much more guitaristic because this is how the hand works. We use our first finger, and Barrios does these great stretches. But you have to move your wrist. You might have to duck your shoulder. I'm getting off of Cage. Sorry, this happens. So, without the 2 strings, measure 16, with the 2 strings, the G sharp, and if you don't hear a difference, it's up to you. You decide. I like challenges, hence I did it. 4th phrase. And this I find very straightforward. The only thing that I really do is I try to use my pinky. I like using my pinky a lot. Some people might go like this. My only rule is that you don't squeak. Cage didn't write a squeak. We don't need a squeak. It doesn't help the music. If you're playing a bluesy, jazzy piece, squeaks can be okay. But I don't see it adding to the music. So I use all of my fingers and I do a 3-string bar so I can play the G sharp on the third string at the end of that measure. So, and in the right hand, it's subtle. Beat 2 is a D and a B. And then we have eighth note C, and that G sharp, the D needs to stop. And so a trick is actually sticking your thumb, when you go to play, touch the D string with your flesh. So I'm not using the right chords, but here's D and B, and then I go to play the second and third string. I stop the bass note with my thumb. Does that make sense? So this is I know I'm playing some Dion's right now, and he talks about that. But this is a standard way to stop a string. This is why open strings are not always easy, because if your thumb's really busy and you have notes ringing, it can muddy the sense of what you want to do. Certain pieces, it's great. Bach, it's a pain in the butt because the harmony is often based on those bass notes. So if your bass notes are ringing over each other, how do you stop it? Well, you either have to use your left hand or your right hand, or you marcato the bass, which you could do in this if you wanted to. Here, I like the notes connecting as legato as possible. So I do a little slide on my pinky and back. So my second string, the top voice, 1, 4, 1, 4, 3, 4. That was ugly. And that way I get to still keep the third over 2 strings, which I tried to do throughout the piece. Sometimes it doesn't work. I do a little retard there. And then rather than repeat, we're going to go on to the coda. And here I do keep it in the first position. A little reachy. If you need to change it, you could. That's what I do. That was my fingering, and I'm going to show you a couple. Again, this is measure 27 to the end. So there's other ways to do it. 27 beat 3, very clear. It's just the way it's notated. Your melody is the inner voice. And now here you could do G sharp D with an open B. And you want that D to be in the melody though. So maybe what you can do is add a little accent in your right hand. Maybe push a little more into the guitar on the third string, so it rings. And then if you do 2 and 4, all you have to do is put your third finger down for your E, G sharp. Nice little, here's your E major 7 chord. That's all we're outlining. And you could do this in the first position. F, A, C, open E, so take off the C because that's our melody. E major, D and F, only place, well, G sharp, little reach, A minor, inverted. Now I do D, E, G sharp, B, which is a stretch. 5, 2, 1, open. 5th fret, 2nd fret, 1st fret, open. Other option, there's always other options on the guitar, is you could do E, G sharp. You can do it up on the 12th fret, open B and open D. So you do 4, 6, 5, 1 if you wanted to roll it. 4, 6, 5, 1. You can even do it harmonic, so you only need 1 finger down. Cage wrote cadenza. So you end on your A minor, put a little vibrato, and then standard A minor. If someone did that for me in a lesson or performance, hats off to you. We don't ever want to hurt ourselves. Part of my fingering is I just chose how to do that. And I said, this is what I want to do. And I stuck with it. And then I was teaching it to another student. And I'm like, why did I do it that way? You know, I was young. I needed the money. I mean, it's just, we do things. And what I would say is make 2 copies and write in various fingerings and try it out. And then as you play, Vladimir Mikulka, who used to be head of Paris Conservatory, he would do 3 or 4 different scores, different colored pencils. And here's one fingering. He'd play it, learn it. Here's another fingering, here's another fingering. And then his final fingering was in red. That's what I was told. And I don't think that's a bad idea. And then get rid of the fingering and read it as you get better. Like, you know, a year down the road, look at it without any fingering and go, why did I choose that? You know, that's okay. Or 5 years down the road.